Rebecca threw the resignation letter on billionaire Marcus Kane's marble desk, her cleaning uniform still damp with sweat. "I quit," she whispered, avoiding his piercing blue eyes. But when she turned to leave his penthouse forever, Marcus did something that made her freeze. He got down on one knee. What she did next shocked everyone. Before we begin, write in the comments what city you're watching from. And at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy watching. The rejection that started everything. The clock on Marcus Kane's marble desk showed 3:17 a.m. when Rebecca Miller pushed her cleaning cart through the penthouse's heavy glass doors. The silence in the apartment felt thick and cold, like stepping into a tomb made of money and loneliness. She pulled on her rubber gloves and grabbed the cleaning supplies. Another night, another mess to clean up in the life of Manhattan's most ruthless billionaire. Rebecca had been working for elite cleaning services for 2 years, and Marcus Kane's penthouse was her most difficult assignment. Not because of the size, though the place was massive, taking up the entire top floor of Kane Tower. Not because of the expensive things everywhere, though she was terrified of breaking something worth more than her yearly salary. It was difficult because of the blood. Rebecca walked into the master bathroom and stopped. Dark red stains covered the white marble floor again. She'd cleaned this same mess 3 times this month. Her hands shook as she filled the bucket with bleach and water. "What kind of man lives like this?" she whispered to herself, scrubbing the floor on her hands and knees. She didn't know that Marcus Kane was watching her through the security cameras in his home office 20 floors below. He sat in his leather chair, his tie loosened around his neck, studying the woman who cleaned up his messes without asking questions. Rebecca hummed while she worked. It was a soft, sad melody that made something twist in Marcus's chest. She moved through his cold penthouse like she was trying to bring warmth to it. When she arranged his books, she did it carefully, like they mattered. When she watered his plants, she talked to them quietly. Marcus had never paid attention to the cleaning staff before Rebecca, but there was something about her that pulled at him. Maybe it was the way she never looked at him with dollar signs in her eyes. Maybe it was how she seemed genuinely kind in a world where everyone wanted something from him. Rebecca finished the bathroom and moved to his bedroom. She made his bed with military precision, fluffed his pillows and dusted every surface. Then she saw it. A thick manila envelope sat on his nightstand, with her name written across it in Marcus's sharp handwriting. Rebecca stared at it for a long moment, her heart beating faster. She shouldn't open it. She knew that. But her fingers moved before her brain could stop them. Inside was a contract, a marriage contract, for $2 million. Rebecca's legs went weak. She sank onto the edge of Marcus's bed, reading the papers with shaking hands. The contract was detailed and clinical. She would marry Marcus Kane, appear at public events with him, live in his penthouse for 1 year. In exchange, she would receive $2 million. It's not what you think. Rebecca jumped, spinning around to find Marcus standing in the bedroom doorway. He looked tired, his dark hair messy, his expensive shirt wrinkled, but his blue eyes were sharp and focused on her face. "Mr. Kane, Rebecca stood up quickly, dropping the contract. "I wasn't snooping. I saw my name and—" "I know." Marcus stepped into the room, his hands in his pockets. "I wanted you to find it." "Why?" The word came out as a whisper. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. "Because I'm tired of being alone, and you're the only person who's ever looked at me like I'm human instead of a bank account." Rebecca felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Mr. Kane, this is—" "Marcus," he said softly. "Just Marcus. Marcus." His name felt strange on her tongue. "This is crazy. You don't know anything about me? I know you work 3 jobs to support your sick sister. I know you hum while you clean because you're trying to stay positive, even when everything is falling apart. I know you rearrange my books by color because you think it looks prettier." Marcus took a step closer. "I know you're kind in a world that's forgotten what kindness looks like." Rebecca's chest felt tight. "You've been watching me." "Yes." Marcus didn't deny it. "And I've been thinking about this for months. It would be a business arrangement, nothing more. You'd have your own room, your own space. At the end of the year, you'd be free to go with enough money to take care of your sister forever." Rebecca looked down at the contract, her mind spinning. $2 million. Emma could have the surgery she needed. They could pay off all their debts. Rebecca could go to college like she'd always dreamed, but selling herself to do it, even if it was just on paper. "I'm not for sale," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. She picked up the contract and threw it back at Marcus. The papers scattered across his expensive rug. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he didn't move to pick up the contract. "Everyone has a price, Rebecca." "Not me." Rebecca grabbed her cleaning supplies, her hands shaking with anger, and something else she didn't want to name. "I may not have money, but I have my dignity." She walked toward the elevator, her heart pounding so hard she was sure Marcus could hear it. Her finger pressed the call button, and she waited for the doors to open, praying Marcus wouldn't try to stop her. He didn't. But when the elevator doors slid open and Rebecca stepped inside, she made the mistake of looking back at him. Marcus stood in his bedroom doorway, surrounded by luxury and emptiness, and she saw something break in his blue eyes. The elevator doors closed between them, and Rebecca leaned against the wall, trying to catch her breath. She'd just walked away from $2 million and the most beautiful man she'd ever seen. But as the elevator carried her down from Marcus Kane's world, she couldn't shake the image of his face. He hadn't looked angry when she rejected him. He'd looked hurt, and that scared her more than anything. 3 days of silence. 3 days passed without a word from Marcus Kane. Rebecca sat at her tiny kitchen table, staring at the pile of unpaid bills scattered across the surface. Electric bill, past due, rent, late notice, Emma's medical bills, threatening collections. She counted the coins in her coffee mug for the 3rd time, hoping somehow there would be more money than before. $17.38. That was everything she had until her next paycheck. Her phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Still feeling weak. Doctor wants to run more tests. Love you, sis." Rebecca closed her eyes and pressed her fingers to her temples. Emma was only 19, 4 years younger than Rebecca, and she'd been sick for months. The doctor said it was her heart, something that could be fixed with surgery. But surgery cost money they didn't have. Rebecca had been working 3 jobs, cleaning for elite services at night, waitressing at Joe's diner during the day, and stocking shelves at the grocery store on weekends. She barely slept, barely ate. But it still wasn't enough. The marriage contract flashed through her mind. $2 million, enough to save Emma and change both their lives forever. But the memory of Marcus's face when she threw the papers at him made her stomach twist. She couldn't sell herself, no matter how desperate things got. Could she? 20 floors above the city, Marcus Kane sat in his office staring out at Manhattan's skyline. He hadn't been home to the penthouse since Rebecca left. The thought of walking into those empty rooms, of seeing the contract pages still scattered on his bedroom floor, made his chest feel hollow. His assistant knocked on the door. "Mr. Kane, your dinner is getting cold." "I'm not hungry," Marcus said without turning around. It was the same answer he'd given for 3 days. Food turned to dust in his mouth. Sleep wouldn't come. All he could think about was the way Rebecca had looked at him, not with disgust or greed, but with disappointment, like she'd expected better from him. Marcus had built his empire by reading people, by finding what they wanted and using it to his advantage. But Rebecca Miller had looked at his offer of $2 million and thrown it back in his face. She'd rather struggle and suffer than take his money. He'd never met anyone like her. His phone rang, jolting him from his thoughts. The caller ID showed Elite Cleaning Services. "Kane?" he answered. "Mr. Kane, this is Janet from Elite Cleaning. I'm calling about your service. Rebecca Miller submitted a request to be reassigned from your account." Marcus's grip tightened on the phone. "Why?" She didn't give specific details, but she asked to be moved to different clients. I wanted to check with you first, since you've had the same cleaner for 2 years. Don't reassign her, Marcus said quickly. I'll handle this myself. He hung up and grabbed his car keys. Rebecca was leaving Joe's diner when she saw the black Mercedes parked outside. Her heart stopped as Marcus Kane stepped out of the driver's seat, looking impossibly handsome in his dark suit despite the tired lines around his eyes. Rebecca. His voice was softer than she remembered. Mr. Kane. She clutched her purse strap tighter and kept walking. I can't talk. I have to get to my next job. Marcus fell into step beside her. I went to Elite Cleaning. They said you wanted to be reassigned. Yes. Rebecca didn't look at him, focusing on putting one foot in front of the other. I think that's best for everyone. I don't. Rebecca stopped walking and finally looked at him. The busy New York street moved around them, but it felt like they were standing in their own bubble. What do you want from me? Come back, Marcus said simply. Forget about the contract. Just come back to work like before. I can't. Rebecca's voice was barely a whisper. Every time I look at you, I'll remember what you think of me. That I'm something you can buy. That's not... Marcus ran a hand through his hair, frustration clear on his face. You don't understand. Then explain it to me. Marcus stared at her for a long moment, something vulnerable flickering in his blue eyes. I've never had anyone in my life who wasn't there for my money. My parents, my friends, every woman I've ever dated, they all wanted something from me. You're the only person who's ever looked at me and seen just Marcus. Rebecca felt her anger wavering. So you offered to buy me like everyone else? Because I'm an idiot, Marcus said roughly. Because I don't know how to connect with people without using money. It's the only language I speak. A taxi honked loudly as it passed, breaking the spell between them. Rebecca remembered where she was, who she was talking to. A billionaire CEO and a cleaning woman, having a conversation on a busy street corner. It was like something from a movie. I have to go, she said, stepping away from him. I'm going to be late. Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded paper. This isn't a marriage contract, he said, holding it out to her. It's just an employment offer. Triple your current salary to come back and clean the penthouse. Nothing else, no strings attached. Rebecca stared at the paper in his hands. Triple salary would solve so many of her problems. She could help Emma catch up on bills, maybe even save a little money for the first time in her life. This isn't about money, she said, but her trembling voice gave her away. Isn't it? Marcus asked gently. Your sister needs surgery. You're working yourself to death trying to keep up with bills. Let me help. Why? Rebecca's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. Why do you care what happens to me? Marcus stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his expensive cologne and see the gold flecks in his blue eyes. Because you matter, Rebecca. You matter to me. Before she could respond, before she could think about what she was doing, Rebecca reached out and took the contract from his hands. Their fingers brushed for just a moment, but it sent electricity shooting up her arm. Just employment, she said, her voice shaking. Nothing else? Nothing else, Marcus agreed, but his eyes said something different entirely. Rebecca folded the contract and put it in her purse. I'll see you tomorrow night, Mr. Kane. Marcus? He corrected softly. Rebecca nodded and walked away, her heart pounding with each step. She'd just agreed to go back into Marcus Kane's world, back to his penthouse where everything had changed between them. She told herself it was just for the money, just to help Emma. But as she disappeared into the crowd, she could feel Marcus watching her go, and the warmth of his gaze followed her all the way home, back in his world. Rebecca stood outside the glass doors of Marcus Kane's penthouse, her hand frozen on the handle. 24 hours ago, she'd sworn she'd never come back here. Now she was about to walk back into the world that had turned her life upside down. She took a deep breath and pushed open the door. The penthouse was transformed. Where before everything had been cold and sterile, Now there were fresh flowers on the coffee table. Warm light glowed from table lamps instead of the harsh overhead lighting. The space felt lived in, human. "You came back." Rebecca turned to find Marcus standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, silhouetted against the Manhattan skyline. But instead of his usual expensive suit, he wore simple jeans and a soft grey t-shirt. His dark hair was slightly messy, like he'd been running his hands through it. He looked more human than she'd ever seen him. "I gave you my word," Rebecca said, setting down her cleaning supplies. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Marcus nodded toward the kitchen. "There's actual food in there now. Coffee too, if you want some." Rebecca blinked in surprise. In 2 years of cleaning this penthouse, the kitchen had always been empty, except for expensive bottles of whiskey and takeout containers. "You don't cook?" "No," Marcus admitted with a small smile. "But I figured you might get hungry during your shift, and I thought—" He paused, looking suddenly uncertain. "I thought maybe we could try being normal." "Normal?" Rebecca repeated. "Friends, maybe. Or at least not strangers." Marcus shoved his hands in his pockets, a gesture that seemed oddly vulnerable coming from him. "I don't need a wife, Rebecca. I need someone who sees me as Marcus, not a bank account." The words hung between them, honest and raw. Rebecca felt something shift in her chest, a crack in the wall she'd built around her heart. "I should get started," she said softly, reaching for her supplies. "Wait." Marcus crossed the room toward her, moving slowly like he was approaching a skittish animal. "Before you begin, there's something I want to show you." Rebecca hesitated, then nodded. Marcus led her down a hallway she'd never cleaned before, stopping at a door she'd always assumed was locked. "I've never shown this to anyone," Marcus said quietly, his hand on the doorknob. "Not even my housekeeper knows about this room." He opened the door and stepped aside to let Rebecca enter first. The room took her breath away. It was an art studio, filled with natural light from a skylight above. Canvases covered every surface, some finished, others half completed. But it wasn't the artistic talent that made Rebecca's chest ache. It was the subject matter. Every painting showed the same thing: loneliness. A single figure standing at a window, an empty chair by a fireplace, a shadow on an otherwise blank wall. The technique was masterful, but the emotion behind each piece was devastating. "Marcus," Rebecca whispered, moving deeper into the room. "These are incredible." "They're pathetic," Marcus said roughly, a grown man painting his feelings like some teenager with a diary. Rebecca turned to look at him, seeing past his defensive words to the vulnerability underneath. "They're honest. That's not pathetic. That's brave." Marcus stared at her like she'd said something in a foreign language. "Brave? To put your pain on canvas like this? To create something beautiful from something that hurts?" Rebecca touched the edge of a canvas, showing a man's silhouette against a city skyline. "That takes courage." "I started painting after my father died," Marcus said quietly. "It was the only way to get the feelings out without falling apart completely." "How old were you?" 16. Marcus's voice was barely audible. "He had a heart attack at his desk. Died alone in his office just like he'd lived. I swore I'd never end up like that, but..." He gestured at the paintings around them. "Here I am, alone in my tower, just like him." Rebecca felt tears prick her eyes. Without thinking, she reached out and touched Marcus's hand. His skin was warm, and she felt him go very still at the contact. "You're not your father," she said softly. Marcus looked down at their joined hands, wonder flickering across his face like he couldn't believe she was touching him voluntarily. "How do you know?" "Because your father died alone, but you're here with me." The silence stretched between them, charged with something Rebecca didn't want to name. Marcus's thumb brushed across her knuckles, and she felt heat spread up her arm. This was dangerous territory. She was here to work, to earn the money that would save Emma. She couldn't afford to get tangled up in Marcus Kane's complicated heart. But when she tried to pull her hand away, Marcus held on gently. Don't, he whispered. Please, just for a minute. Rebecca's resolve crumbled. She let Marcus hold her hand as they stood surrounded by his lonely paintings, two people finding connection in the most unlikely place. I should make us that coffee, Marcus said finally, his voice rough with emotion. Rebecca nodded, not trusting her voice. As Marcus led her back to the kitchen, she tried to ignore the way his hand felt in hers, warm and strong and right. In the kitchen, Marcus moved around with surprising efficiency for someone who claimed he didn't cook. He made coffee with the same intense focus he probably brought to board meetings, measuring and timing everything perfectly. Cream? Sugar? He asked, holding up the mug. Just cream, please. Marcus added cream to her coffee and handed it to her, their fingers brushing again as she took the mug. The contact sent sparks through Rebecca's entire body. Thank you, she said, taking a sip. The coffee was perfect, rich and smooth, and exactly how she liked it. You're welcome. Marcus leaned against the counter across from her, cradling his own mug. Tell me about your sister. Emma? Rebecca's face softened. She's amazing. Smart, funny, kind. She was going to be a teacher before she got sick. What's wrong with her? Her heart. She needs surgery, but... Rebecca trailed off, not wanting to talk about money with the man who'd offered her $2 million to marry him. But you can't afford it, Marcus finished gently. Rebecca nodded, her throat tight. The doctors say if she doesn't get the surgery soon, she'll... She couldn't finish the sentence. She'll be fine, Marcus said firmly. We'll figure it out. We? Rebecca looked up at him, surprised by his use of the word. Marcus met her gaze steadily. You're not alone in this anymore, Rebecca. I meant what I said. You matter to me. The words wrapped around Rebecca's heart like a warm embrace. When was the last time someone had told her she mattered? When was the last time someone had wanted to help her without expecting something in return? I should get to work, she said, setting down her empty mug. Of course. Marcus straightened up. I'll be in my office if you need anything. As Rebecca gathered her cleaning supplies, she felt Marcus watching her. When she looked back at him, he was smiling, not his usual polished business smile, but something softer and more real. Rebecca? He called as she headed toward the living room. Yes? Marcus hesitated for a moment, then said quietly, I'm glad you came back. Rebecca felt her cheeks warm. Me too. It wasn't until she was halfway through dusting the living room, humming softly to herself, that Rebecca realized what had changed. For the first time in months, she didn't feel completely alone. Marcus Kane, cold, ruthless billionaire Marcus Kane, had looked at her like she was something precious. And despite all her warnings to herself, Rebecca was starting to look at him the same way. In his office, Marcus sat at his desk but couldn't focus on the contracts spread before him. Instead, he found himself listening to the soft sound of Rebecca humming as she worked, the same melody that had captivated him through the security cameras. But now he didn't need cameras to see her. She was here, in his space, bringing warmth to the cold corners of his penthouse and his heart. Marcus had spent his entire adult life building walls to protect himself from people who wanted to use him. But Rebecca Miller made him want to tear those walls down. He just hoped she'd still be there when he did. The night. Everything changed. The storm hit Manhattan without warning. Rebecca was polishing the windows in Marcus's living room when the first flash of lightning split the sky. Thunder followed seconds later, so loud it made the glass shake under her hands. Looks like a bad one, Marcus said, appearing beside her with 2 mugs of coffee. He'd taken to making coffee for both of them during her shifts, a small ritual that had become the best part of Rebecca's night. I should finish up quickly, Rebecca said, accepting the mug gratefully. I don't like driving in storms. Outside, the rain began, not a gentle shower, but a violent downpour that turned the city streets into rivers. Lightning flashed again, closer this time, and the lights in the penthouse flickered. Marcus frowned, pulling out his phone. The weather app says this storm is going to last all night. Winds up to 60 miles per hour. He looked at Rebecca with concern. You can't drive in this. I'll be fine, Rebecca said, but her voice lacked conviction. Her old Honda had trouble on good days. In a storm like this, she'd be lucky to make it 2 blocks. Another flash of lightning lit up the sky, followed immediately by thunder that seemed to shake the entire building. The lights flickered again and went out. Emergency lighting kicked in a few seconds later, bathing the penthouse in a soft, warm glow. But outside, the storm raged on with terrifying intensity. That settles it, Marcus said firmly. You're staying here tonight. Marcus, I can't. You can and you will. His voice held the same authority he probably used in boardroom negotiations. I have guest rooms. You'll be safe and comfortable, and in the morning when the storm passes, I'll have my driver take you home. Rebecca wanted to argue, but another crash of thunder made her jump. The truth was, she was terrified of driving in this weather. And the thought of spending the night in Marcus's penthouse, away from her tiny, lonely apartment, was more appealing than she wanted to admit. Okay, she said softly. Thank you. Marcus's face relaxed into a smile. Good. Are you hungry? I was thinking we could cook dinner together. You want to cook? Rebecca couldn't hide her surprise. I want to try, Marcus said. I figured if I'm going to have actual food in the kitchen, I should probably learn how to prepare it. An hour later, Rebecca was laughing so hard she could barely stand. Marcus Kane, billionaire CEO and master of the universe, had just set off the smoke alarm trying to boil pasta. How do you burn water? Rebecca gasped, waving a kitchen towel at the detector until it stopped shrieking. I didn't burn the water, Marcus protested, his cheeks red with embarrassment. I burned the pasta. There's a difference. Not really, Rebecca giggled, taking the ruined pot from his hands. Here, let me show you. She moved to the stove and started over, talking Marcus through each step. He stood close behind her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his body and smell his expensive cologne mixed with smoke. The trick is to keep stirring, Rebecca explained, demonstrating with the wooden spoon. And don't turn the heat up so high. Like this? Marcus reached around her to take the spoon, his arms bracketing her on either side, his chest pressed against her back, and Rebecca's breath caught. Yes, she whispered, hyper-aware of every point where their bodies touched. Just like that. They stood frozen for a moment, the pasta forgotten. Rebecca could feel Marcus's breath on her neck, could hear his heart beating fast against her back. All she had to do was lean into him and... The timer for the oven went off, breaking the spell. Rebecca stepped away quickly, her cheeks burning. The bread, she said, grabbing oven mitts. It's ready. Dinner was surprisingly successful after their rocky start. Marcus had ordered ingredients from some expensive grocery service, and Rebecca worked magic with simple pasta, fresh vegetables, and crusty bread. They ate at the kitchen island, the storm raging outside the windows. This is incredible, Marcus said, twirling pasta on his fork. I can't remember the last time I had a home-cooked meal. Really? Never? My mother died when I was 8, Marcus said quietly. My father lived on takeout and restaurant food. I guess I just followed his example. Rebecca felt her heart clench at the sadness in his voice. I'm sorry. Losing your mother so young must have been devastating. It was. She was the only person who ever... Marcus paused, staring down at his plate. She was the only person who ever loved me just for being me. The words hung heavy in the air between them. Rebecca reached across the island and covered Marcus's hand with hers. Tell me about her, she said softly. Marcus's eyes met hers, surprised by the genuine interest in her voice. She was beautiful, not just on the outside, but inside too. She volunteered at children's hospitals, donated money to charities my father thought were worthless. She painted watercolors and sang off-key in the shower and made the best chocolate chip cookies in the world. She sounds wonderful. She was. Marcus turned his hand palm up, intertwining his fingers with Rebecca's. She would have liked you. How do you know? Because she would have seen what I see when I look at you, Marcus said, his voice low and intense. Kindness, strength, beauty that comes from the inside out. Rebecca's heart pounded so hard she was sure Marcus could hear it. The way he was looking at her made her feel like she was the most precious thing in the world. Marcus, she whispered, but she didn't know what to say after that. Thunder crashed outside and the lights flickered again. This time they stayed off longer before the emergency power kicked in. We should probably get some sleep, Marcus said reluctantly, releasing her hand. The guest room is down the hall from my bedroom. It has its own bathroom, fresh towels, everything you need. Rebecca nodded, suddenly shy. The thought of sleeping in Marcus's penthouse just down the hall from his bedroom made her stomach flutter with nervous excitement. As if reading her thoughts, Marcus stood up and took a step closer to her. Rebecca, I want you to know nothing has to happen between us. You're safe here. I would never. I know, Rebecca interrupted softly. I trust you. Something flashed in Marcus's eyes at her words. Wonder, maybe, or disbelief that someone could trust him so completely. They cleaned up the dinner dishes together, moving around the kitchen in comfortable synchronization. When Marcus reached over Rebecca to put a plate in the cabinet, she turned at the same moment, and suddenly they were face to face, inches apart. Time seemed to stop. Marcus's gaze dropped to Rebecca's lips, and she felt her breath catch. He was going to kiss her. Every nerve in her body was screaming for him to kiss her. Instead, Marcus stepped back, his jaw tight with restraint. I should show you to your room, he said, his voice rougher than usual. The guest room was beautiful, all soft colors and comfortable furniture that probably cost more than Rebecca made in a year. But what struck her most was how thoughtful Marcus had been. There were fresh flowers on the nightstand, fluffy towels in the bathroom, even a new toothbrush still in its package. If you need anything, I'm right down the hall, Marcus said from the doorway. Sleep well, Rebecca. Good night, Marcus. Rebecca closed the door and leaned against it, her heart still racing from their almost kiss in the kitchen. She changed into the soft pajamas Marcus had somehow procured for her and climbed into the most comfortable bed she'd ever experienced. But sleep wouldn't come. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Marcus's face inches from hers, felt the heat of his body pressed against her back while they cooked together. The storm continued to rage outside, but inside the penthouse, all Rebecca could think about was the man sleeping just down the hall, the man who was starting to mean everything to her. Around midnight, Rebecca gave up on sleep and padded to the kitchen for a glass of water. She found Marcus there, sitting at the island in pajama pants and a t-shirt, staring out at the storm. Can't sleep either? She asked softly. Marcus turned to look at her, his blue eyes dark in the dim lighting. No, too much on my mind. Rebecca poured herself water and sat beside him, close enough to feel his warmth but not quite touching. Want to talk about it? Marcus was quiet for so long Rebecca thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, I keep thinking about what you said earlier, about trusting me. What about it? No one has ever said that to me before, not since my mother died. Marcus's voice was barely a whisper. I've spent so many years being the kind of man people fear or want something from. I'd forgotten what it felt like to be trusted. Rebecca's heart ached for the pain in his voice. Without thinking, she reached out and touched his cheek, turning his face toward hers. You're a good man, Marcus Kane, she said firmly. Complicated, yes. Hurt, definitely. But good. I can see it in the way you paint, the way you worry about me driving in the storm, the way you're trying so hard to be better. Marcus leaned into her touch, his eyes closing like her words were a physical balm. I don't deserve you. That's not your decision to make, Rebecca said. That's mine. When Marcus opened his eyes, the vulnerability there took Rebecca's breath away. This wasn't the cold billionaire who'd offered to buy her. This was just Marcus, lonely, damaged, desperate to be loved for who he was instead of what he owned. Rebecca, he whispered her name like a prayer. This time, when he leaned toward her, Rebecca didn't pull away. Their lips met in a kiss that was soft and hesitant at first, then deeper as years of loneliness and want poured out between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. I'm scared, he admitted. Of what? Of this. Of you. Of how much I already care about you. Marcus's hands cupped her face gently. I don't know how to do this, Rebecca. I don't know how to be with someone without ruining it. Rebecca smiled and covered his hands with hers. Then we'll figure it out together. Outside, the storm was finally beginning to ease, but inside Marcus Kane's penthouse, a different kind of storm was just beginning. The kind that changes everything and leaves nothing the same. As Marcus pulled Rebecca closer for another kiss, both of them knew there was no going back from this moment. They'd crossed a line that would change everything between them, and for the first time in their lives, neither of them was afraid of what came next. Dangerous territory. Rebecca woke up in Marcus's arms. Sunlight streamed through the guest room windows, and for a moment she couldn't remember where she was. Then the events of the previous night came flooding back. The storm, dinner together, their kiss in the kitchen, falling asleep on the couch while talking until dawn. Marcus must have carried her to bed at some point, because she was tucked under the covers while he lay on top of them, still fully clothed, his arm wrapped protectively around her waist. This wasn't what she'd signed up for. Panic shot through Rebecca's chest as reality crashed over her. She was a cleaning woman who'd spent the night in a billionaire's penthouse. She'd kissed her employer. She'd fallen asleep in his arms like they were in some kind of relationship. What was she thinking? Rebecca carefully extracted herself from Marcus's embrace, trying not to wake him. He looked younger in sleep, the harsh lines of stress smoothed away from his face. She wanted to trace his jaw with her finger. Wanted to wake him with a kiss like they were a real couple. But they weren't a real couple. This was all pretend, all fantasy. In the real world, men like Marcus Kane didn't fall for women like Rebecca Miller. She grabbed her cleaning supplies and started working, needing the familiar routine to ground herself. She was dusting the living room when the penthouse door opened and a woman walked in like she owned the place. Rebecca had never seen anyone more beautiful. The woman was tall and elegant, with platinum blonde hair swept into a perfect chignon and diamonds sparkling at her throat. Her designer dress probably cost more than Rebecca's rent for a year. Well, well, the woman said, looking Rebecca up and down with obvious disdain. So this is the help Marcus is playing house with. Rebecca's cheeks burned with humiliation. I'm sorry, who are you? Sophia Hartwell, the woman said, like her name should mean something. Marcus's girlfriend. Well, ex-girlfriend, but that's just a temporary situation. Rebecca felt like she'd been slapped. I should go. Yes, you should. Sophia moved deeper into the penthouse, trailing expensive perfume and entitlement. Marcus has always had a thing for charity cases, but this is a new low even for him. What's going on here? Both women turned to see Marcus emerging from the guest room, his hair messy from sleep, his clothes wrinkled. His eyes went immediately to Rebecca, concern flickering across his face when he saw her expression. Sophia, he said, his voice cold. What are you doing here? I came to talk, Sophia purred, moving toward him with predatory grace. We need to discuss our future, darling. The board is asking questions about your personal life, and I think it's time we got back together publicly. Marcus's jaw tightened. We don't have a future, Sophia. I made that clear 6 months ago. Oh, please, Sophia laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You can't be serious about this little fantasy you're playing with the cleaning girl. She's a novelty, Marcus, a phase. When you get bored of slumming it, you'll come back to me. Rebecca felt something shrivel inside her chest. Every insecurity she'd ever had about being with Marcus came crashing down on her. Sophia was right. Rebecca was just a novelty, a temporary distraction for a bored billionaire. Don't talk about Rebecca like that, Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. He looked uncomfortable, caught between two worlds that didn't mix. The silence that followed felt like an eternity. Rebecca waited for Marcus to defend her, to tell Sophia she was wrong, to choose Rebecca over the woman who clearly belonged in his world, but Marcus said nothing. I should get back to work, Rebecca whispered, grabbing her cleaning supplies. Rebecca, wait. Marcus started forward, but Sophia caught his arm. Let her go, darling. We have so much to discuss. Rebecca's hands shook as she gathered her things. She felt small and foolish, like a child playing dress-up in grown-up clothes. Last night had been beautiful, but it had also been a mistake, a wonderful, terrible mistake that was going to break her heart. She retreated to the supply closet, the only place in the penthouse that felt like hers. Closing the door behind her, Rebecca sank onto a bucket and let the tears fall. She'd been so stupid. Marcus Kane wasn't her Prince Charming. He was her employer. A man so far above her station that his ex-girlfriend could dismiss her like an annoying insect. And Marcus had let it happen. The closet door opened, and Marcus appeared in the doorway. His face was stricken when he saw her tears. Rebecca, I'm sorry. Sophia had no right to speak to you like that. But she did, Rebecca said, wiping her face with the back of her hand. She walked into your penthouse like she belonged here, and you let her. I was surprised. I didn't expect to see her. That's not the point. Rebecca stood up, trying to find her dignity. The point is that she's right. I don't belong in your world, Marcus. Last night was a mistake. Don't say that. Marcus stepped into the closet, closing the door behind him. The small space suddenly felt impossibly intimate. Last night was the most real thing that's happened to me in years. Real? Rebecca laughed bitterly. Nothing about this is real. You're a billionaire CEO, and I clean toilets for a living. Sophia Hartwell looks like she stepped off a magazine cover, and I buy my clothes at thrift stores. This isn't a fairy tale, Marcus. This is real life, and in real life, people like us don't end up together. Marcus reached for her, but Rebecca stepped back. You didn't defend me, she said quietly. When she called me a charity case, when she said I was just a phase, you said nothing. The truth of her words hit Marcus like a physical blow. I was trying to process. You were ashamed of me. No. The word came out fierce and desperate. No, Rebecca, never. I was ashamed of myself, of the man I used to be, the man who would have agreed with everything Sophia said. But I'm not that man anymore. You've changed me. Rebecca wanted to believe him. God, how she wanted to believe him. But the doubt Sophia had planted was growing like poison in her chest. I need some time to think, she said. I need to figure out what I'm doing here. Marcus looked like she'd stabbed him. Don't leave, please. Give me a chance to make this right. How? Rebecca asked. How do you make this right? How do you bridge the gap between your world and mine? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his blue eyes searching her face. I don't know, he admitted, but I'm willing to try. Are you? Before Rebecca could answer, Sophia's voice rang through the penthouse. Marcus, darling, are you coming? I have reservations at Le Bernardin, and you know how they feel about tardiness. The reminder of Sophia's presence shattered whatever fragile connection Rebecca and Marcus had rebuilt. Sophia was still here, still making claims on Marcus's time and attention, still representing everything Rebecca would never be. You should go, Rebecca said, her voice hollow. Your girlfriend is waiting. She's not my girlfriend. Then what is she? Marcus hesitated just a second too long. It's complicated. Those two words broke Rebecca's heart more than anything else he could have said. Because complicated meant that Sophia still had power over him. Complicated meant that 6 months after their breakup, Marcus still couldn't completely let her go. "I'll finish cleaning and then I'll leave," Rebecca said. "I think we both need some space to figure out what we really want." Marcus looked like he wanted to argue, but Sophia's voice called out again, more insistent this time. "This isn't over," he said quietly. Rebecca met his gaze steadily. "Maybe it should be." Marcus stared at her for another heartbeat, pain and frustration warring in his expression. Then he turned and walked away, leaving Rebecca alone in the supply closet with her broken heart and shattered dreams. Through the thin walls, she could hear Sophia's laughter, bright and confident. The sound of a woman who knew exactly where she belonged and had no doubt she'd get what she wanted. Rebecca had never felt more invisible in her life. She finished cleaning the penthouse mechanically, trying not to listen to the conversation happening in the living room. But she couldn't help catching fragments. Sophia's plans for Marcus's social calendar, mentions of charity galas and board meetings, the easy intimacy of two people who'd shared a life together. By the time Rebecca finished, Sophia was gone and Marcus was standing by the windows, his shoulders tense with stress. "Rebecca," he said without turning around, "we need to talk. I think we've said enough for one day." Rebecca gathered her supplies, desperate to escape before she broke down completely. "I ended things with Sophia, permanently this time." Rebecca's steps faltered, but she didn't turn around. "That's between you and her. It's between you and me too." Marcus finally turned, and Rebecca saw raw desperation in his face. "I told her that I'm with someone else now, someone who matters more than she ever did." "Are you?" Rebecca asked quietly. "With someone?" The question hung in the air between them, loaded with everything they'd shared and everything they stood to lose. "I want to be," Marcus said simply. "If she'll have me." Rebecca's heart clenched, but she forced herself to stay strong. "I need time, Marcus. I need to figure out if I can handle being with someone whose ex-girlfriend can walk into his home whenever she wants. Someone whose world is so different from mine that I feel like an outsider looking in." Marcus took a step toward her. "What if I could change that? What if I could make you feel like you belong?" "How?" "I don't know yet," Marcus admitted. "But I'll figure it out. Just don't give up on us before we have a real chance." Rebecca looked at him. This beautiful, complicated man who'd turned her world upside down in the span of a few weeks. She wanted to run to him, to let him hold her and promise that everything would be okay. But she'd learned the hard way that promises were easy to make and harder to keep. "Good night, Marcus," she said softly, and walked toward the elevator. This time Marcus didn't try to stop her, but as the elevator doors closed between them, Rebecca saw him mouth 2 words that followed her all the way home. "I'm sorry." Fighting for her. Marcus Kane had never begged for anything in his life. He'd built his empire through determination, intelligence, and the kind of ruthless focus that left no room for weakness. Begging was for people who didn't have power, didn't have options. But as he stood in the hallway outside Rebecca's apartment at 7 in the morning, holding a cup of coffee from her favorite diner and practicing what he wanted to say, Marcus realized he was about to beg. For her. For them. For a chance to prove that what they had was worth fighting for. The apartment building was a far cry from his penthouse peeling paint, a broken elevator, the smell of cooking food and old cigarettes in the hallways. But Marcus climbed 4 flights of stairs without complaint, because this was Rebecca's world, and he was determined to be worthy of it. He knocked softly on her door, his heart hammering against his ribs. "Just a minute," Rebecca's voice called from inside. When the door opened, Marcus's breath caught. Rebecca looked exhausted, like she'd slept as poorly as he had. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she wore an oversized sweater that had seen better days. She was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. "Marcus." Her voice was barely a whisper. "What are you doing here?" "I brought you coffee," he said, holding out the cup, "from Joe's diner. 2 creams, no sugar, just how you like it. Rebecca stared at the cup like it might explode. How did you know where I live? Your employee file, Marcus admitted. I know it's crossing a line, but I had to see you. We need to talk about what happened yesterday. There's nothing to talk about. Rebecca started to close the door, but Marcus put his hand on it gently. Please, Rebecca. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. After a long moment, Rebecca stepped back and let him into her tiny apartment. Marcus looked around, taking in the small space that somehow felt more like home than his penthouse ever had. Everything was clean but worn, chosen for function rather than style. Photos of Rebecca and a younger girl covered one wall. Emma, he realized, the sister she was working so hard to save. This is nice, Marcus said, and he meant it. The apartment had something his penthouse lacked: warmth, personality, love. You don't have to lie, Rebecca said, crossing her arms over her chest. I know what this place looks like compared to where you live. It looks like a home, Marcus said simply. Something I've never had. Rebecca's defensive posture softened slightly, but she didn't sit down. What do you want, Marcus? I want to apologize for yesterday, for Sophia, for not defending you the way I should have. Marcus set the coffee on her small kitchen table. I was caught off guard, and I handled it badly. It's not about how you handled it, Rebecca said. It's about the fact that she was right. I don't belong in your world. Then I'll come to yours. Rebecca blinked in surprise. What? If you don't fit in my world, I'll make myself fit in yours. Marcus took a step closer, his eyes intense on her face. I meant what I said last night, Rebecca. You've changed me. You make me want to be better than I am. Marcus, I love you. The words hung in the air between them, raw and honest and terrifying. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. Don't, she whispered. Please don't say that. Why? Because you don't feel the same way? Because I do feel the same way, Rebecca said, her voice breaking. And it's going to destroy both of us. Marcus closed the distance between them in 2 strides, cupping her face in his hands. Then let it destroy us. Let it burn down everything we thought we knew about ourselves and build something new from the ashes. Before Rebecca could protest, Marcus kissed her. It was desperate and hungry and full of all the things he couldn't say. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. I fired Sophia's security access to my penthouse, he said quietly. Changed all the codes, had the locks replaced. She'll never walk into my home uninvited again. That's not the real problem, and you know it, Rebecca said, but she didn't pull away from his touch. Then tell me what the real problem is. Help me understand so I can fix it. Rebecca was quiet for a long moment, her hands coming up to cover his. The real problem is that I'm falling in love with someone I can never really have. You'll always be Marcus Kane, billionaire CEO. And I'll always be the cleaning woman who got lucky enough to catch your attention for a while. That's not how I see you. It's how everyone else sees me. It's how Sophia sees me. It's how your board of directors and your friends and everyone in your world will see me. Rebecca's voice was steady, but tears tracked down her cheeks. I can't live my life as your secret, Marcus. I can't be the woman you visit when you want to feel normal, then hide away when you go back to your real life. Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. Is that what you think you are to me? A secret? Aren't I? The question was a challenge, and Marcus knew his answer would determine everything between them. He thought about his upcoming board meeting, the charity gala next week, the social obligations that filled his calendar. He thought about what it would mean to show up to those events with Rebecca on his arm. No, he said firmly. You're not my secret. You're my choice. Prove it. The words came out fierce and demanding, and Marcus saw the strength that had drawn him to Rebecca in the first place. She wasn't backing down, wasn't making this easy for him. She was asking him to put his money where his mouth was. How? The Kane Industries charity gala is next week, Rebecca said. I looked it up online after Sophia mentioned your social calendar. Take me. Marcus's eyes widened. The charity gala was the social event of the season, attended by Manhattan's elite. Every major business leader, politician, and socialite would be there. The press would photograph everyone who walked through the doors. Taking Rebecca would be a statement, a very public declaration that she mattered to him. "Rebecca," he said carefully, "are you sure? Once we do that, there's no taking it back. Everyone will know about us." "Good. If I'm going to be with you, I'm not going to hide it." Rebecca's chin lifted defiantly. "Either I'm worthy of being seen with you in public, or I'm not worthy of being with you at all." Marcus stared at her, amazed by her courage. She was asking him to risk everything: his reputation, his business relationships, his standing in society for her. And he realized he wanted to. God help him. He wanted to walk into that gala with Rebecca on his arm and show the world that she was his. "Okay," he said simply. "We'll go together." Surprise flickered across Rebecca's face, like she'd expected him to back down. "Really? Really?" Marcus smiled, feeling lighter than he had in years. "But you're going to need a dress." "I can't afford—" "I'll take care of it," Marcus said quickly. "And before you argue, it's not charity, it's logistics. You can't wear a $20 dress to a $1,000 a plate dinner. Let me handle the dress, and you handle being brave enough to walk into that ballroom with me." Rebecca studied his face for a long moment, searching for any sign that he was having second thoughts. Whatever she saw there must have convinced her, because she nodded. "Okay, but I have conditions." "Name them." "No more surprise visits from ex-girlfriends. No more complicated situations that leave me feeling like an outsider. If we're doing this, we're doing it honestly." "Agreed. And if you change your mind, if you decide I don't fit in your world after all, you tell me right away. Don't string me along out of guilt or pity." Marcus cupped her face again, his thumbs brushing away her tears. "I'm not going to change my mind, Rebecca. What I feel for you isn't going away." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I've spent 32 years building walls around my heart, and you tore them all down in a matter of weeks." Marcus kissed her forehead gently. "You're not a phase or a novelty or anything else," Sophia said. "You're the best thing that's ever happened to me." Rebecca melted into his arms, and Marcus held her tight, breathing in the scent of her shampoo and the warmth of her skin. For the first time since Sophia had walked into his penthouse, he felt like everything might actually work out. "So," Rebecca said, her voice muffled against his chest, "what does one wear to a billionaire's charity gala?" Marcus laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest. "Leave that to me. I know exactly what you should wear." "Something expensive? Something that shows everyone in that room that you belong there as much as anyone else." Marcus pulled back to look at her, his eyes serious. "Because you do belong there, Rebecca. You belong with me." As he kissed her again, Marcus made a silent promise. He was going to make sure Rebecca never felt like an outsider in his world again, even if it meant turning that world upside down to do it. The charity gala was in 5 days. 5 days to prepare for the most important evening of their relationship. 5 days to prove that love really could conquer all. The secret room. 3 days before the charity gala, Rebecca discovered Marcus's most closely guarded secret. She was cleaning the penthouse as usual, humming softly while she worked, when she noticed the door to Marcus's art studio was slightly ajar. In the 2 weeks since he'd shown her his paintings, the room had always been locked when she arrived for her shifts. Rebecca paused outside the door, her cleaning supplies in hand. She should probably just close it and move on. The room was Marcus's private sanctuary, and she'd already seen more of his vulnerability than most people ever would. But something made her push the door open and step inside. The art studio looked different than before. New canvases covered the easels, but these weren't the lonely, dark paintings she'd seen earlier. These were full of color and light and life. These were paintings of her. Rebecca's breath caught as she moved deeper into the room. There was a painting of her laughing while making coffee in his kitchen. Another of her curled up on his couch during the storm, her face peaceful in sleep. A third showed her hands as she arranged flowers, the gesture captured with loving detail. But it wasn't just the subjects that took her breath away. It was the way Marcus had painted her. Like she was precious, like she was beautiful, like she was loved. You weren't supposed to see those yet. Rebecca spun around to find Marcus standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. Instead of his usual business attire, he wore jeans and a paint-stained t-shirt, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. "Marcus," she breathed, "these are incredible." "They're invasive," Marcus said, stepping into the room. "I painted them from memory, from watching you move through my life. If they make you uncomfortable—" "They make me feel beautiful," Rebecca interrupted softly. Marcus went very still. "You are beautiful, more beautiful than I could ever capture on canvas." Rebecca turned back to the paintings, her heart swelling with an emotion too big for words. "When did you paint these?" "The past 2 weeks. I couldn't sleep, couldn't focus on work. All I could think about was you." Marcus moved to stand beside her, his shoulder brushing hers. I kept replaying moments we'd shared, trying to capture them before they faded. "This one," Rebecca said, pointing to a painting of herself reading on his couch. "I don't remember doing this." "You fell asleep reading while I was working in my office. I came out to check on you and found you like that." "With the book still open in your lap and the afternoon light streaming across your face." Marcus's voice was quiet, reverent. "You looked so peaceful, so at home in my space. I'd never seen anything more beautiful in my life." Rebecca felt tears prick her eyes. "You've been watching me fall in love with you too." The words slipped out before she could stop them, and Marcus turned to face her fully. "Is that what's been happening?" he asked softly. "You falling in love with me?" Rebecca met his gaze, no longer afraid of the truth. "Yes, despite every logical reason why I shouldn't, despite knowing how complicated this is, I'm falling in love with you." Marcus cupped her face in his paint-stained hands. "Good, because I'm already completely gone." This time when he kissed her, there was no hesitation, no fear, no voice in the back of Rebecca's mind telling her this was a mistake. There was only Marcus, only the way he touched her like she was made of spun glass and starlight. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. "I need to tell you something," he said quietly. "What?" "I've never felt this vulnerable before. Not since I was 8 years old and watching my mother die in a hospital bed." Marcus's voice was raw with honesty. "You terrify me, Rebecca. The power you have over me, the way you could destroy me if you wanted to. It should send me running. But it doesn't? No. Because you're not the kind of person who would use that power to hurt me. You're not like everyone else in my world." Marcus pulled back to look at her, his blue eyes intense. "You see me, Rebecca? The real me. Not the $1 billion net worth or the reputation. Just Marcus." Rebecca's heart clenched at the vulnerability in his voice. "I see you," she confirmed, "and I love what I see." Something shifted in Marcus's expression, something desperate and hungry and tender, all at once. "Stay with me tonight," he said. "Not in the guest room." "With me?" Rebecca's pulse skyrocketed. "Marcus!" "I don't want to sleep alone anymore," he said simply. "I don't want to wake up reaching for you and finding empty space. I want you in my bed, in my arms, in my life." The raw honesty in his voice undid her completely. Rebecca had been holding back, trying to protect herself from getting too deep too fast. But standing in his art studio, surrounded by paintings of herself through his eyes, she realized it was too late for protection. She was already in love with him, completely, irrevocably in love. "Okay," she whispered. Marcus's face lit up like she'd given him the moon. Really? Really? Rebecca smiled, feeling brave and reckless and alive. But I should finish cleaning first. Forget the cleaning, Marcus said, pulling her closer. I'll hire someone else to clean. I want you here with me, not as my employee, but as the woman I love. What am I going to do for work? Whatever you want. Go to college, start a business, travel the world. I'll support you in anything you want to do. Marcus's hands framed her face gently. You don't have to take care of everyone else anymore, Rebecca. Let me take care of you. The offer was tempting beyond words, but Rebecca shook her head. I need to work, Marcus. I need to feel useful, to have my own purpose. I won't be a kept woman, no matter how much I love you. Then work with me, Marcus said immediately. The Kane Foundation needs a new director of community outreach, someone who understands what it's like to struggle, to need help, someone with a good heart and strong values. Rebecca blinked in surprise. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a career, a chance to make a real difference in people's lives while being fully qualified and properly compensated for your work. Marcus smiled. And it would mean we'd be working together, building something meaningful. The idea sent excitement shooting through Rebecca's veins. A real job, a chance to help people, working alongside the man she loved. It sounded too good to be true. What about Emma's surgery? She asked. Already taken care of, Marcus said quietly. I contacted her doctor this morning and paid for everything. She's scheduled for next week. Rebecca stared at him, overwhelmed. Marcus, you can't just... I can, and I did. His voice was firm but gentle. Your sister is going to be fine, Rebecca. You don't have to carry that weight anymore. The tears came then, months of stress and fear and exhaustion pouring out of her in great shuddering sobs. Marcus pulled her against his chest and held her while she cried, his hand stroking her hair. It's okay, he murmured. I've got you. I've got both of you. When the tears finally stopped, Rebecca felt lighter than she had in years. The crushing weight of responsibility that had been driving her for so long was gone, replaced by something warm and hopeful. Thank you, she whispered against Marcus's chest. Don't thank me. Love me. Rebecca pulled back to look at him, seeing her future reflected in his blue eyes. I do love you, more than I thought possible. Marcus smiled and kissed her again, soft and sweet and full of promise. Come to bed with me, he said. Let me show you how much I love you. Rebecca let him lead her from the art studio to his bedroom, her heart pounding with anticipation and nerves. This was it, the moment they crossed the final line between employer and employee, between lonely strangers and lovers, the moment they became everything to each other. Marcus's bedroom was softly lit by bedside lamps, the king-sized bed turned down invitingly. But he didn't rush her, didn't grab or demand. Instead, he stood facing her and slowly began unbuttoning his shirt. Are you sure about this? He asked quietly. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, Rebecca replied, reaching for the hem of her sweater. They undressed each other slowly, reverently, mapping each revealed inch of skin with gentle hands and soft kisses, when they finally came together on his bed. Skin to skin, heart to heart, it felt like coming home. Marcus made love to her like she was precious beyond measure, whispering her name and words of love against her skin. Every touch was worship, every kiss a prayer of gratitude for the miracle of finding each other. Afterward, they lay tangled together in his bed, Rebecca's head on Marcus's chest, their hearts beating in sync. I love you, Marcus said quietly, his fingers combing through her hair. I want to spend the rest of my life proving that to you. Rebecca tilted her head to look at him, seeing forever in his eyes. I love you too. All of you, the brilliant businessman, the vulnerable artist, the man who saves people without expecting anything in return. We're really doing this, aren't we? Marcus said, wonder in his voice. Building a life together, if you'll have me. Marcus rolled them over, so he was looking down at her, his expression serious. Rebecca Miller, you own my heart completely. There's no going back for me, no changing my mind, no second thoughts. You're it for me. Rebecca smiled and pulled his face down for a kiss. Good, because you're it for me too. As they fell asleep, wrapped in each other's arms, both of them knew that everything had changed. They'd crossed into territory from which there was no return, claimed each other in the most fundamental way possible. In 2 days, they would face Marcus's world together at the charity gala. They would make their relationship public and deal with whatever consequences came. But tonight, they were just Marcus and Rebecca, two people who'd found love in the most unlikely place and chosen to fight for it together. Tomorrow could bring its challenges. Tonight was theirs. When everything falls apart. The charity gala should have been perfect. Rebecca stood in front of the full-length mirror in Marcus's bedroom, hardly recognizing herself. The dress Marcus had chosen for her was a masterpiece of midnight blue silk that hugged her curves and flowed like water when she moved. Her hair was swept up in an elegant chignon, and the diamond necklace at her throat, a gift from Marcus, caught the light with every breath. You're magnificent, Marcus said from behind her, his reflection appearing in the mirror as he adjusted his black tie. He looked devastating in his tuxedo, every inch the powerful billionaire she'd fallen in love with. I feel like I'm playing dress-up, Rebecca admitted, smoothing her hands over the expensive fabric. Marcus stepped closer, his hands settling on her waist. You look like you belong in that dress. Like you belong with me. Rebecca leaned back against his chest, drawing strength from his warmth. Are you ready for this? For everyone to see us together? I've been ready since the moment I met you, Marcus said, pressing a kiss to her temple. Have I told you lately that I love you? Only about 100 times today, Rebecca laughed, some of her nervousness easing. Good, because I plan to tell you 100 more times before the night is over. The gala was held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and arriving felt like stepping into a fairy tale. Photographers lined the red carpet, flashbulbs popping as Manhattan's elite made their grand entrances. Rebecca's palms grew sweaty as their limousine approached the entrance. Hey, Marcus said softly, taking her hand. Look at me. Rebecca met his eyes, seeing steady confidence there. We belong here, he said firmly. Together. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise. Rebecca nodded and squeezed his hand. Together. The moment they stepped out of the limousine, camera flashes exploded around them. Rebecca heard the whispers starting immediately. Who was she? Where had she come from? Was this Marcus Kane's new girlfriend? Marcus kept his hand firmly on the small of her back, guiding her through the crowd with practiced ease. He stopped to speak with reporters, introducing Rebecca as the woman who changed my life and deflecting invasive questions with smooth professionalism. Inside the museum, the party was in full swing. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over women in designer gowns and men in perfectly tailored tuxedos. Rebecca recognized faces from magazines and news programs, business leaders, politicians, celebrities, and they were all staring at her. Marcus, darling! Rebecca's blood ran cold as a familiar voice cut through the party chatter. Sophia Hartwell approached them, stunning in a red dress that probably cost more than most people's cars. But it wasn't Sophia that made Rebecca's heart sink. It was the man beside her. James Morrison, the chairman of Kane Industries' board of directors, Marcus's boss, essentially, and the man who held Marcus's professional future in his hands. Sophia, Marcus said coolly. James, I didn't expect to see you together tonight. Oh, we ran into each other at the bar, Sophia said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. James was just telling me how concerned the board is about your recent lifestyle changes. James Morrison was a silver-haired man in his 60s with cold eyes and a politician's smile. He looked Rebecca up and down like she was a piece of merchandise he was considering buying. "Miss Miller, isn't it?" he said. "I understand you work in sanitation." The way he said it made Rebecca's cheeks burn with shame. "I'm in cleaning services, yes." "How interesting," James said, though his tone suggested it was anything but. "And how did you meet our Marcus?" "She was assigned to clean my penthouse," Marcus said before Rebecca could answer. His voice was steady, but she could feel the tension in his body. "Ah," James nodded knowingly. "Well, that certainly explains the attraction." The implication hung in the air like poison. Rebecca felt every eye in their vicinity turn toward them, saw the barely concealed sneers on perfectly made-up faces. "If you'll excuse us," Marcus said tightly. "Rebecca and I were just heading to our table." "Of course," Sophia purred. "We'll catch up later. I have so much to tell you about the Pemberton account." As they walked away, Rebecca could hear the whispers following them. Gold digger. Social climber. What is Marcus Kane thinking? Dinner was a nightmare. Rebecca sat beside Marcus at a table full of business associates and their wives, feeling like an imposter in her beautiful dress. The conversation flowed over topics she knew nothing about: mergers and acquisitions, yacht clubs in the Hamptons, children at exclusive private schools. "And what do you do, dear?" asked the woman across from her, a society matron dripping in pearls. "I work in cleaning services," Rebecca said, lifting her chin with as much dignity as she could muster. The woman's eyebrows rose nearly to her hairline. "How refreshing. Marcus always did like his charity cases." The words hit Rebecca like a physical blow. She felt Marcus tense beside her, saw his jaw clench with barely controlled anger. "Rebecca runs a business that provides essential services," Marcus said coldly. "Something your husband's company depends on, if I'm not mistaken." The woman's face flushed, but before she could respond, James Morrison appeared beside their table. "Marcus, could I speak with you privately?" he asked. It wasn't really a question. Marcus looked at Rebecca, conflict clear in his eyes. "I'll be right back," he said quietly. As soon as Marcus was gone, the vultures descended. The conversation at their table turned to barely veiled gossip about Rebecca's background, her motives, her obvious unsuitability for someone of Marcus's status. "It's really quite sad," one woman said, not bothering to lower her voice. "Marcus has always been so successful, so focused. It's tragic to see him throw it all away for some gold digger." "I heard she was his cleaning lady," another added with theatrical shock. "Can you imagine? The help actually thinking she belongs in our world?" Rebecca sat frozen, her hands clenched in her lap, trying to maintain her composure while cruel words rained down around her. This had been a mistake. Marcus's friends, his colleagues, his entire world, they would never accept her. She would always be the cleaning woman who got above her station. Across the room she could see Marcus in heated conversation with James Morrison and several other board members. Even from a distance, she could tell it wasn't going well. Marcus's face was tight with anger, his posture defensive. Then she saw Sophia join the group, her hand touching Marcus's arm in a gesture that was both intimate and possessive. The way the men's faces relaxed when she appeared, the way they included her in their conversation like she belonged there. It was everything Rebecca would never be. "Excuse me," Rebecca whispered, standing abruptly from the table. She made her way through the crowded ballroom, desperate for air, for space, for somewhere to hide from the stares and whispers that followed her every step. She found refuge in a small side gallery, empty except for ancient sculptures and her own reflection in the dark windows. "Rough night?" Rebecca turned to find a young woman about her own age, beautiful in an understated way, wearing a simple black dress that probably cost a fortune. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" Rebecca asked. "Victoria Chen," the woman said, extending her hand. "I'm a reporter for the Times, business section." Rebecca's blood went cold. "I don't want to talk to any reporters." "Relax," Victoria said with a gentle smile. "I'm not here to ambush you. I'm here because I recognize what you're going through." "I doubt that." "My mother was a seamstress in Chinatown," Victoria said quietly. "My father drove a taxi. When I started dating my husband, who happens to be a federal judge, his family made it very clear I didn't belong. The looks, the whispers, the casual cruelty. I know exactly how you're feeling right now." Rebecca felt her defenses crumble slightly. "How do you stand it?" "By remembering that their opinion of me doesn't change who I am or what I'm worth," Victoria said, "and by having a partner who stands up for me no matter what." "Marcus tried," Rebecca said softly, "but there are too many of them, and only one of him." Victoria was quiet for a moment, studying Rebecca's face. "Can I give you some advice?" Rebecca nodded. "Don't let them win by walking away. The moment you leave that ballroom, you prove every horrible thing they've said about you, that you're not strong enough, not worthy enough, not good enough." Victoria's voice was firm but kind. "Marcus Kane chose you, not Sophia Hartwell, not some society princess, you. Don't make him regret that choice by giving up at the first sign of resistance." Before Rebecca could respond, Marcus appeared in the gallery doorway. His face was thunderous, his usually perfect hair slightly mussed like he'd been running his hands through it. "There you are," he said, relief flooding his voice. "I've been looking everywhere for you." "How did the conversation with the board go?" Rebecca asked, though she already knew from his expression. "About as well as expected," Marcus said grimly. "They're concerned about my judgment, my priorities, my ability to lead the company while dealing with distractions." The word hit Rebecca like a slap. "Distractions?" "Their word, not mine," Marcus said quickly. "Rebecca, we need to talk." Victoria Chen cleared her throat delicately. "I'll leave you two alone. Rebecca, remember what I said." After she left, Marcus and Rebecca stood facing each other in the empty gallery, the weight of the evening's events hanging between them. "They want me to choose," Marcus said quietly. "The board, the investors, everyone who matters to Kane Industries. They want me to choose between you and my company." Rebecca felt her heart shatter into 1,000 pieces. "And what did you tell them?" "I told them to go to hell," Marcus said fiercely. "I told them that you're the best thing that's ever happened to me, and if they can't accept that, they can find themselves a new CEO." Rebecca stared at him in shock. "Marcus, you can't do that. Kane Industries is your life's work." "You're my life now," Marcus said, stepping closer. "Everything else is just business." "No." Rebecca shook her head, backing away from him. "I won't let you destroy everything you've built for me. I won't be responsible for that." "You're not responsible for their bigotry and small-mindedness," Marcus said desperately. "Rebecca, please, we can get through this together." But Rebecca was already pulling off the diamond necklace, her hands shaking as she placed it in Marcus's palm. "I can't do this, Marcus. I thought I could, but I can't." "What are you saying?" Rebecca looked at him. This beautiful, powerful man who'd offered to give up everything for her, and felt her heart break all over again. "I'm saying that some love costs too much." She turned toward the exit, but Marcus caught her arm gently. "Don't do this. Don't let them win." "They already have," Rebecca said, tears streaming down her face. "Look around, Marcus. This is your world. These are your people. I'll never belong here, and trying to force it will only hurt both of us." "I don't care about them," Marcus said desperately. "I only care about you." "But I care about you," Rebecca replied. "Too much to let you sacrifice everything that matters to you." She pulled free of his grasp and walked away, her heels clicking on the marble floor like a countdown to the end of everything beautiful they'd built together. Behind her, she heard Marcus call her name, but she didn't stop. She couldn't stop, because if she turned around and saw the pain in his eyes, she'd never be strong enough to leave. Outside the museum, Rebecca climbed into a taxi and gave the driver her address. As they pulled away from the gala, she looked back one last time to see Marcus standing on the steps, still in his perfect tuxedo, looking lost and broken. By the time she got home, her phone was buzzing with missed calls and text messages from Marcus. Rebecca turned it off without reading them. She packed a small bag with essentials, left a note for her landlord about breaking her lease early, and called a cab to take her to Emma's hospital. Emma was sleeping when Rebecca arrived, looking small and fragile in the hospital bed, but alive, recovering from the surgery that Marcus had made possible. "I'm sorry," Rebecca whispered, kissing her sister's forehead. "I'm so sorry I couldn't make it work." She settled into the uncomfortable hospital chair and watched Emma sleep, trying not to think about Marcus alone in his penthouse, surrounded by paintings of a love that had been too beautiful and too impossible to survive. Some fairy tales didn't have happy endings. Sometimes love wasn't enough to bridge the gap between two different worlds. Sometimes walking away was the kindest thing you could do for someone you loved, more than life itself. The hunt. Marcus destroyed his penthouse that night. He came home from the gala still wearing his tuxedo, his bow tie hanging loose around his neck, Rebecca's diamond necklace clutched in his hand. The silence in the apartment was deafening after the noise and chaos of the evening. Rebecca was gone, really gone this time, not just angry or hurt or needing space. She'd looked at him with such finality in her eyes, like she was saying goodbye forever. The first thing he destroyed was the coffee maker, the one they'd used together every night, the one that had become part of their ritual. It shattered against the kitchen wall with a satisfying crash. Then he moved to the living room, sweeping everything off the coffee table. The books Rebecca had arranged, the flowers she'd brought life to, the throw pillows she'd positioned just so. Glass and porcelain exploded across the marble floor. By the time the sun rose, Marcus's perfect penthouse looked like a war zone. Broken furniture, shattered glass, holes punched in walls by fists that couldn't feel pain anymore. He sat in the middle of the destruction, still in his ruined tuxedo, holding Rebecca's necklace like a talisman. His phone buzzed with a text from his assistant. "Board meeting moved to 9 a.m. Morrison wants to discuss your future with the company." Marcus looked at the message and laughed, a sound devoid of humor. They thought they'd won. They thought that by making Rebecca leave, they'd brought him back in line. They had no idea what they'd actually done. The board meeting was a bloodbath. Marcus walked into the conference room 45 minutes late, wearing the same wrinkled tuxedo from the night before, his hair disheveled, and his eyes red-rimmed with exhaustion and rage. "Gentlemen," he said, not bothering to sit down, "I believe you wanted to discuss my future." James Morrison cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable with Marcus's appearance. "Marcus, we're concerned about last night's display. The board feels that your recent behavior has been erratic and potentially damaging to the company's reputation." "You mean dating someone beneath my station?" Marcus asked coldly. "We mean becoming involved with someone whose background raises questions about your judgment," another board member said. "Kane Industries has a certain image to maintain." Marcus looked around the table at these men who'd helped him build his empire, who'd trusted him with billions of dollars in investments and hundreds of thousands of jobs, men he'd considered mentors and friends. "Let me make something very clear," Marcus said, his voice deadly quiet. "Rebecca Miller is the most honest, hard-working, compassionate person I've ever met. She's also the only person who's ever loved me for who I am rather than what I own. If you can't see her worth, that says everything about your character and nothing about hers." "Marcus, be reasonable," Morrison said. "This woman is obviously using you for your money." "She refused $2 million to marry me," Marcus interrupted. "She's worked 3 jobs to support her sick sister rather than ask me for help. She's turned down every expensive gift I've tried to give her, except the ones necessary for public appearances. If she's a gold digger, she's the worst one in history." The room fell silent. Marcus could see the doubt creeping into their faces, the realization that their assumptions about Rebecca might be wrong. "Regardless," Morrison said finally. "The board feels it would be best if you ended this relationship for the good of the company." Marcus smiled, and it was a terrifying expression. "Gentlemen, let me save you the trouble of firing me. I quit." The explosion of voices was immediate. Protests, threats, pleas for him to reconsider. Marcus ignored them all. "You'll destroy everything you've built," Morrison warned. "You already did that," Marcus replied. "The moment you made Rebecca feel like she wasn't good enough for your approval, you destroyed everything that mattered to me." He walked out of the conference room and didn't look back. But leaving Kane Industries didn't solve his real problem. Rebecca was still gone, and Marcus had no idea where to find her. He tried calling her phone, disconnected. He went to her apartment, empty, with a note from the landlord saying she'd broken her lease. He called Elite Cleaning Services, but they said Rebecca had quit without giving a forwarding address. It was like she'd vanished from the face of the earth. Marcus hired the best private investigator in New York. Thomas Gray was a former FBI agent who specialized in finding people who didn't want to be found. If anyone could track down Rebecca, it was him. "I'll find her," Gray promised. "But I have to ask, are you sure she wants to be found? Sometimes when people disappear this completely, it's because they're trying to send a message." "Find her," Marcus said simply. "Whatever it takes." While Gray searched, Marcus threw himself into other pursuits. He started his own investment firm, poaching several key employees from Kane Industries and taking 3 major clients with him. James Morrison was furious, but there was nothing he could do. Marcus had been careful not to violate any non-compete clauses. He also anonymously donated $10 million to the hospital where Emma Miller was recovering from her heart surgery. If he couldn't take care of Rebecca directly, at least he could make sure her sister had the best possible care, but none of it filled the emptiness in his chest where his heart used to be. 2 weeks after the gala, Gray called with news. "Found her," he said without preamble. "She's in Portland, Oregon, working 3 jobs again, waitressing at a diner called Murphy's, cleaning offices at night, and stocking shelves at a grocery store on weekends." Marcus felt something that might have been hope stir in his chest. "Address?" "Small apartment above a bookstore on Hawthorne Boulevard." "Marcus." Gray's voice turned cautious. "She looks rough, like she hasn't been sleeping or eating much. Whatever happened between you two hit her hard." "She still loves me," Marcus said, more to himself than to Gray. "Maybe. But love isn't always enough, is it?" Marcus thought about Rebecca's face the night of the gala, the way she'd looked at him like she was memorizing every detail before saying goodbye forever. "Sometimes it has to be," he said quietly. Marcus booked a flight to Portland that same day, but as the plane lifted off from JFK, he realized he had no idea what he was going to say to Rebecca when he found her. "I'm sorry. I love you. Come back to New York with me." None of those words seemed adequate for what he'd put her through, for the choice he'd forced her to make between her own self-respect and their relationship. Rebecca had been right that night at the gala. Some love did cost too much, but Marcus was beginning to understand that the cost of living without that love was even higher. He'd spent 2 weeks in hell without Rebecca. He'd destroyed his penthouse, quit his job, and burned bridges with people he'd known for years, all because she'd been brave enough to walk away from something that was slowly killing both of them. But what if there was another way? What if instead of asking Rebecca to fit into his world, he found a way to fit into hers? As the plane flew west toward Portland, Marcus made a decision. He wasn't going to Portland to bring Rebecca back to his old life. He was going to start a new life, one where they could both be happy, even if it meant giving up everything that had defined him before. Rebecca was worth it. She'd always been worth it. Now he just had to convince her of that. The plane touched down in Portland at midnight, and Marcus took a taxi straight to Hawthorne Boulevard. The bookstore Rebecca lived above was dark, but there was a light on in the second-floor window. Marcus stood on the sidewalk looking up at that light, knowing Rebecca was just a few feet away, probably getting ready for bed after another exhausting day of working multiple jobs to survive, jobs she wouldn't need if she'd stayed with him, a struggle she wouldn't have to face if she'd let him take care of her. But Rebecca Miller had never been the kind of woman to take the easy path. It was one of the things he loved most about her. Marcus climbed the narrow stairs to the second floor and knocked softly on her door. He heard movement inside, footsteps approaching, then stopping. "Rebecca," he said quietly, "I know you're there. Please open the door." Silence. "I'm not leaving," Marcus said, settling down on the floor outside her door. "I'll sit here all night if I have to. All week. However long it takes." More silence. Then finally the sound of locks being undone. The door opened, and there she was. Rebecca looked exactly like Gray had described. Exhausted, too thin, with dark circles under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and heartbreak. But she was still the most beautiful thing Marcus had ever seen. "Hello, Rebecca," he said softly. "What are you doing here, Marcus?" Her voice was hoarse like she'd been crying. "I came to tell you that you were right," Marcus said, getting to his feet. "About the gala, about my world, about the cost of our love. You were right about all of it." Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. "Then why are you here?" Marcus smiled, and for the first time in 2 weeks, it was a real smile. "Because I realized something. If your world and my world can't coexist, then I choose yours." Rebecca stared at him like he was speaking a foreign language. "What does that mean?" "It means I quit Kane Industries. It means I left New York and came to find you." "It means I'm ready to build a new life, a better life with you." Marcus took a step closer. "If you'll have me." "Marcus," Rebecca whispered, her voice breaking. "You can't just throw your life away for me." "I'm not throwing it away," Marcus said. "I'm finally starting to live it." As he reached for her hand, Marcus prayed that 2 weeks of hell apart had been enough to convince Rebecca that they belonged together, no matter what world they chose to live in, because he wasn't leaving Portland without her, not this time, not ever again. The choice that changes everything. Rebecca stared at Marcus standing in her doorway, afraid to believe what she was seeing. He looked different. Gone was the perfectly pressed suit and polished appearance. Instead, he wore jeans and a simple sweater, his hair slightly longer and less controlled than before. He looked younger somehow, more real. "You quit Kane Industries," she said slowly, like she was testing the words to see if they made sense. 2 weeks ago," Marcus confirmed, "right after the board meeting, where they asked me to choose between you and the company. And you chose me." Rebecca's voice was barely a whisper. "I chose us," Marcus said, "though at the time I wasn't sure there still was an us to choose." Rebecca stepped back, wrapping her arms around herself. "Marcus, you shouldn't have done that. Your company, your life's work, means nothing without you," Marcus interrupted, following her into her small apartment. "Rebecca, I've spent the last 2 weeks living in hell. I destroyed my penthouse the night you left. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't think about anything except how badly I'd failed you." "You didn't fail me," Rebecca said, tears streaming down her face. "I failed us. I gave up when things got hard instead of fighting for what we had." Marcus cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. "You were protecting yourself, and me in a way. You saw what staying with me would cost, and you were brave enough to walk away before we both got destroyed." "But I was destroyed anyway," Rebecca admitted. "Living without you, pretending I don't love you. It's been killing me slowly." "Then don't," Marcus said simply. "Don't live without me anymore. Come back to me, Rebecca. Let's figure this out together." "How?" Rebecca asked. "Nothing's changed, Marcus. Your world still won't accept me. The gap between us is still too wide." Marcus smiled and pulled something from his pocket. A business card. "Actually, everything's changed." Rebecca took the card and read it aloud. "Kane Foundation. Marcus Kane, Director. She looked up at him in confusion. I don't understand. After I quit Kane Industries, I started my own foundation, using my personal wealth to fund programs that actually make a difference. Job training for people transitioning out of poverty, educational scholarships, healthcare initiatives. Marcus's eyes lit up with genuine excitement. And I want you to run the community outreach division. Not as a favor, not as charity, but because you're the most qualified person I know for the job. Rebecca sank onto her small couch, overwhelmed. Marcus, I don't have the education, the credentials. You have something better, Marcus said, sitting beside her. You have experience. You know what it's like to struggle, to work multiple jobs just to survive, to make impossible choices between bills and necessities. The people we'd be helping, they'll trust you because you've been where they are, and you really quit everything else. I kept my investments, my personal wealth, but the corporate world, the board meetings, the social obligations, all of it's gone. Marcus took her hands in his. I realized something after you left. I'd spent so many years building walls around myself, creating this image of success and power, that I'd forgotten who I really was underneath all of it. And who are you? Rebecca asked softly. I'm an artist who stopped painting because I thought it made me weak. I'm a man who'd rather cook dinner with the woman he loves than attend 1,000 charity galas. I'm someone who wants to use his resources to actually help people instead of just making more money. Marcus's voice was raw with honesty. I'm the man who fell in love with a cleaning woman and realized she was teaching him how to live. Rebecca felt her walls crumbling, her carefully constructed defenses falling away. What about Portland? I have a life here now, jobs, commitments. We can work from anywhere, Marcus said. Portland, New York, wherever you want to be. The foundation is mobile. We go where the need is greatest. And what happens when you get bored with this new life? When you miss the power and prestige of running a Fortune 500 company? Marcus was quiet for a moment, considering her question seriously. Do you know what I've been doing for the past 2 weeks, besides searching for you? Rebecca shook her head. Painting, Marcus said simply. For the first time since my mother died, I've been painting again. Not the dark, lonely stuff from before, but hope, light, the future I want to build with you. He stood up and walked to her window, looking out at the quiet Portland street. I don't miss the boardroom, Rebecca. I don't miss the corporate politics or the social climbing or any of it. The only thing I missed was you. Rebecca joined him at the window, studying his profile in the streetlight. You really mean this? You're really willing to give up everything for me? Not give up, Marcus corrected, turning to face her. Trade up. I'm trading a life that was slowly killing my soul for a life that actually means something. Because of me? Because of who I am when I'm with you, Marcus said. You make me want to be better, Rebecca. You make me remember what it feels like to be human. Rebecca felt the last of her resistance crumble. The man standing in front of her wasn't the cold billionaire who'd offered to buy her 2 months ago. This was Marcus, vulnerable, honest, willing to risk everything for love. I've missed you so much, she whispered. Marcus's face lit up with relief and joy. Does that mean? It means I love you, Rebecca said, stepping into his arms. It means I want to try again, if you're sure this is what you want. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, Marcus said, holding her tight. I love you, Rebecca Miller. I want to marry you, have babies with you, grow old with you. I want to build something beautiful together, even if it means starting over from scratch. Especially then, Marcus said, pulling back to look at her. We get to write our own story this time. No board of directors, no society expectations, no ex-girlfriends trying to tear us apart. Just us, doing work that matters, with people who care more about character than bank accounts. Rebecca laughed, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. When you put it like that, it sounds pretty perfect. It will be, Marcus said, kissing her softly. We'll make it perfect. As they held each other in her tiny Portland apartment, both of them knew they'd found something rare and precious. Not just love, but partnership. Not just passion, but purpose. The next morning, Rebecca gave notice at all three of her jobs. Marcus found them a small house to rent in Portland's Alberta district. Nothing like his Manhattan penthouse, but warm and welcoming in theirs. They spent the first month setting up the Kane Foundation's Western Regional Office, interviewing potential staff, and developing programs that would actually address the root causes of poverty instead of just treating the symptoms. Rebecca threw herself into the work with passion, using her own experiences to connect with clients in ways that surprised and impressed everyone, including Marcus. She had a gift for seeing potential where others saw problems, for finding solutions that were both practical and compassionate. "You're amazing at this," Marcus told her one evening, as they reviewed applications for their job training program. "It doesn't feel like work when it's something you believe in," Rebecca replied, looking up from her laptop. They were sitting on the couch in their living room, papers and files spread across the coffee table, working late but together. It was a far cry from the isolated loneliness of Marcus's penthouse, and he'd never been happier. "I have something for you," Marcus said, reaching into his desk drawer. Rebecca looked suspicious. "If it's expensive, I'm not taking it." "It's not expensive," Marcus said with a grin. "Well, not monetarily." He pulled out a small canvas, one of his recent paintings. It showed two figures silhouetted against a sunrise, their hands joined, facing a horizon full of possibility. "It's us," Rebecca breathed, taking the painting carefully. "Our new beginning," Marcus confirmed. "I wanted to capture this moment, this feeling of starting fresh together." Rebecca's eyes filled with tears as she studied the painting. It was beautiful in its simplicity, but more than that, it was hopeful in a way Marcus's earlier work had never been. "I love it," she said, setting it carefully on the mantel where they could both see it every day. 6 months later, the Kane Foundation had placed over 200 people in stable jobs, provided educational scholarships to 50 students, and funded 3 new community health clinics. Rebecca had been profiled in Portland Monthly as one of the city's rising non-profit leaders, and Marcus had his first art show at a local gallery. But their biggest success was personal. "Rebecca Miller," Marcus said, getting down on one knee in their tiny backyard garden on a sunny Saturday morning. Rebecca's hands flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with surprise and joy. "You've already changed my life in every way that matters," Marcus continued, pulling out a simple diamond ring. Elegant but not ostentatious, perfect for the woman she'd become. "Now I want to make it official. Will you marry me?" "Yes," Rebecca said through her tears. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." As Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger, Rebecca thought about how far they'd both come. From a cold penthouse and a business transaction to this warm garden and a proposal born of real love and partnership. They were married 3 months later in a small ceremony at Powell Butte Nature Preserve, surrounded by the friends they'd made in Portland and the colleagues who'd become family. Emma, fully recovered from her surgery, served as Rebecca's maid of honor. Marcus's best man was Thomas Gray, the private investigator who'd helped him find Rebecca and had since become one of their closest friends. There were no board members at their wedding, no society photographers, no one who cared about Marcus's net worth or Rebecca's background, just people who loved them for who they'd become together. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the officiant said. As Marcus kissed his bride, Rebecca thought about the woman she'd been when she first met him, tired, struggling, convinced that people like them didn't get happy endings. She'd been wrong. Sometimes the best love stories were the ones that started in the most unexpected places, with the most unlikely people, and grew into something neither person could have imagined alone. "I love you, Mrs. Kane," Marcus whispered against her lips. "I love you too, Mr. Kane," Rebecca whispered back. They danced their first dance to a song about second chances and new beginnings, surrounded by everyone who mattered to them, And as the sun set over the Oregon landscape, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, both of them knew they'd found something worth more than all the money in the world. They'd found home in each other. Don't forget to rate this story and subscribe if you want more love stories like this one.